I swear I'm innocent. Donna Ilara's fragile, desperate cry echoed through the court, tearing through the silence as young Judge Sofia Almeida felt the overwhelming weight of the gavel. Witnesses lied, evidence piled up in an abyss of condemnation, and the verdict seemed sealed for the elderly accused. Suddenly a raven as black as night burst through the window, soaring over the astonished heads and landing on the tribune's ledge. With a piercing caw, the bird dropped something small and shiny right at the magistrate's feet. And what it revealed changed everyone's destiny forever. The small, shiny metallic piece rolled smoothly across the polished floor, stopping a few inches from Judge Sofia Almeida's immaculate shoes. A sepulchral silence swallowed the murmuring that had begun to form as all eyes, previously fixed on the raven now observing from the ledge, turned to the mysterious object. Sophia felt a shiver run down her spine. It wasn't just the surprise of the event, but the feeling that something unforeseen, perhaps even predestined, had just occurred. Her heart pounded against her ribs, a mix of disbelief and an almost childlike curiosity. With a trembling hand, Sophia leaned down, picking up the medallion. It was ancient, made of metal darkened by time, with delicate carvings that seemed to tell a forgotten story. Its weight in her palm was surprising, and the cold texture contrasted with the warmth of her skin. She turned it over, observing the details with the attention the moment demanded, momentarily ignoring the crowded courtroom and Donna Ilara's fixed gaze, which watched her with fragile, almost imperceptible hope. "Order in the court," the bailiff's voice echoed, attempting to restore the formality that the unusual event had broken, but no one seemed to hear him. Lawyers whispered, the public murmured, and the press stirred, eager for an explanation for what they had just witnessed. Sophia, however, was absorbed. Her fingers traced the edges of the medallion, feeling a small groove. With a soft click, one of the halves opened, revealing not a portrait or a lock of hair, as one might expect from an ancient locket, but a tiny, rectangular object, more modern and technological, a micro SD card. A collective gasp filled the air. The judge felt a lump in her throat. This was no mere ornament. It was a message, a piece of a puzzle that refused to fit. Her eyes met Donna Ilara's, who, with her hands clasped in her lap, seemed to have found a breath of life amidst her resignation. There was a spark of something new in the elderly woman's gaze, something Sophia hadn't seen since the trial began. Hope. Sophia held up the medallion and the small card for everyone to see. The room plunged into an even deeper silence, an expectant, almost reverent hush. The raven on the ledge let out a low caw, as if approving the discovery. The young judge, who had always prided herself on her rationality and the law's relentless logic, found herself facing an enigma that challenged her entire understanding of the world. Justice, she thought, could be more complex and mysterious than law books could ever teach. It was a turning point, a crucial moment where the scales of justice seemed to tip in a completely unexpected direction, propelled by a winged messenger and a secret kept within a piece of metal. Judge Sofia Almeida felt the weight of the tiny card in her fingers, an object so minuscule, yet carrying the potential to shake the foundations of that trial. The silence in the room was so dense she could hear her own breathing, and the distant murmur of the city seemed like a forgotten song. Her eyes scanned the faces in the court, the shimmering hope in Donna Ilara's tear-filled eyes, the incredulity of the lawyers, the eager curiosity of the press and the public. As a judge, her mind was trained for logic, for precedence, for order. But what had just happened defied all known order. "Your Honor, with all due respect, what is this?" Dr. Ricardo, the prosecutor, broke the silence, his voice laden with a mix of indignation and confusion. He stood up, his posture rigid. "We cannot allow evidence of unknown origin delivered by a bird to be considered in this court. This is an outrage to the seriousness of justice." Sophia felt a chill. He was right by the law, but something deep inside her, an intuition she rarely allowed to surface in her profession, told her this was no mere coincidence. Her eyes fixed again on Donna Ilara, who watched her with an almost pleading intensity. The elderly woman, who seemed to have aged decades in recent months, now had a renewed sparkle, a flame of faith Sophia could not ignore. Justice was not just the cold letter of the law, it was also the relentless pursuit of truth, no matter how unexpectedly it presented itself. With an almost inaudible sigh, Sophia raised her head, her voice firm, but with a touch of solemnity that captured everyone's attention. "Dr. Ricardo, the court acknowledges the exceptional nature of the situation. However, the pursuit of truth is the fundamental pillar of any trial. This court cannot afford to ignore possible evidence, no matter how unusual its presentation. We will examine the contents of this micro SD card." A murmur spread like wildfire. Donna Ilara's defense attorney, Dr. Mendez, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a tired demeanor, stood up with renewed energy, a faint smile appearing on his lips. "The defense fully agrees with your honor. The truth must prevail." Sophia gestured to the bailiff. "We need a micro SD card reader and a projector, urgently." The bailiff, still stunned, nodded and hurried out of the room. Minutes dragged like hours. The tension was palpable, every breath, every movement amplified in the expectant silence. Donna Ilara clasped her hands in her lap, her eyes fixed on Sophia, silent and profound gratitude overflowing. Finally, a young court technician rushed in, carrying a laptop and a small projector. He set up the equipment with slightly trembling hands, connecting the cables as everyone's eyes followed him. Sophia handed him the tiny card, watching him carefully insert it into the reader. The laptop emitted a soft sound, indicating device recognition. The desktop image appeared on the big screen, and then a folder with a single video file. The technician clicked on the file. The raven on the ledge, which had remained motionless, let out a low caw, almost a warning, as the courtroom screen came to life, about to reveal a secret that could forever change Donna Ilara's fate and everyone's perception of justice present there. The courtroom screen came to life, and the face of a middle-aged man with features marked by evident concern filled the big screen. It was Mr. Osvaldo, partner of Donna Ilara's deceased brother, a figure known for his discretion in business. A murmur of recognition swept through the room, quickly hushed by the man's grave voice as he began to speak in the video. The recording quality wasn't perfect, but the words were crystal clear, carrying a weight that made the air vibrate. I can't take it anymore," Osvaldo's voice sounded, choked with emotion, or perhaps remorse. His bloodshot eyes darted away from the camera. "It was I who poisoned Rogerio. It wasn't Ilara. She is innocent." An electric shock ran through the room. The silence that followed was so absolute that the sound of Sophia's own breathing seemed like thunder in her ears. She felt her heart plummet in her chest, a wave of nausea rising in her throat. It was real. The raven, the medallion, the card. It was all real. Osvaldo continued, his voice taking on a tone of desperate confession. He detailed the plan, his envy of Rogerio's success, the secret debt that suffocated him, and the cruel idea of incriminating Donna Ilara to inherit her brother's share of the business, knowing she would be the prime suspect. He explained how he manipulated the evidence, how he planted the seeds of distrust, weaving a web of lies that almost condemned an innocent woman. Every word was a blow, dismantling the carefully constructed narrative of the prosecution. Donna Ilara, in the defendant's box, brought her trembling hands to her mouth, her eyes welling with tears that finally overflowed. They were not tears of sadness, but of overwhelming relief, of a pain that was beginning to dissolve. Her body, previously bowed by the weight of the accusation, seemed to gain a new posture, a dignity that the truth restored to her. She looked at Sophia, a mix of gratitude and surprise in her gaze. The prosecutor, Dr. Ricardo, was pale. His rigid posture collapsed, his eyes fixed on the big screen, unable to process what he was seeing. Dr. Mendez, the defense attorney, had a discreet but victorious smile on his face as tears flowed freely. The press stirred, reporters frantically typing on their notebooks, knowing they were witnessing one of the most extraordinary moments in the city's legal history. Sophia felt a chill down her spine. The fragility of human justice was revealing itself before her eyes. How close had she come to making an irreparable mistake, to condemning an innocent soul based on circumstantial evidence and the pressure of public opinion. The weight of the gavel, which once seemed a tool of authority, now felt like a dangerous weapon in her hands. The video ended with Osvaldo breaking down in tears, begging for forgiveness, his tormented face frozen on screen. The room plunged into a stunned silence, broken only by Donna Ilara's suppressed sobs. The raven, on the ledge, let out a long, soft caw, as if confirming the end of one stage and the beginning of another. Sophia looked at the bird, at Donna Ilara, at the big screen. Truth, at times, chose the most improbable messengers to manifest itself, and its voice, once heard, was impossible to ignore. Justice, she understood, was not just a system of laws, but a constant and humble recognition that truth, in its purest essence, would always find a way. Justice, she understood, was not just a system of laws, but a constant and humble recognition that truth, in its purest essence, would always find a way. The silence that followed Osvaldo's confession on the big screen was broken by an almost imperceptible sound that reverberated throughout the room. Donna Ilara's muffled sob. She was no longer alone in her pain. The truth embraced her, and the entire court felt the weight of that embrace. Sophia felt her own eyes well up, a lump in her throat that went beyond emotion. It was the shame of having been so close to a colossal error. She raised the gavel, but not to strike, only to signal with a solemn gesture that order would be restored, not by force, but by revelation. Her voice, when it finally came, was choked but firm. "Order in the court! The court! The court is in shock, but the truth has been revealed. Donna Ilara, you are free of all charges. This court declares your innocence." Sophia's words were like a balm to Donna Ilara's wounded soul. The elderly woman broke down in tears, not of despair, but of profound liberation, a weight of months, perhaps years, being lifted from her shoulders. Dr. Mendez, her lawyer, rushed to embrace her, his own eyes moist, a smile of relief and triumph on his tired face. The audience erupted in applause and murmurs of indignation against Osvaldo, the true culprit. The press, in an uproar, recorded every detail of that historic moment. The prosecutor, Dr. Ricardo, remained standing, pale, his mouth agape. His confidence, once unshakable, had crumbled like a house of cards. He looked at Sophia, a mix of respect and incredulity in his gaze, recognizing the depth of the error they had almost committed. Sophia, in turn, felt the fragility of her own position, the immense responsibility she carried. The law, at times, was blind, but justice, she realized, had other eyes, other messengers. The raven on the ledge let out a final caw, no longer a warning, but a sound that seemed like a farewell and took flight, disappearing into the blue sky. Sophia watched it leave, feeling an inexplicable connection to the mysterious bird. It was as if nature itself had intervened to correct a human injustice. She turned to the room, her eyes meeting Donna Ilara's, who now gazed at her with immense gratitude, her hands clasped in silent prayer. "Bailiff, arrange for the immediate arrest of Mr. Osvaldo," Sophia ordered. her voice regaining authority, but now tempered by a new wisdom. And let all procedures for the reparation of the injustice suffered by Donna Ilara be initiated without delay. The courtroom, which once seemed a stage for tragedy, now transformed into a sanctuary for truth. Sophia felt a profound relief, but also a lesson etched into her soul. Justice was a winding path, but truth, with or without wings, would always find its destiny. The courtroom, once a stage of suffocating tension, now vibrated with a different energy. The relief was palpable, mingling with indignation against the true culprit. Donna Ilara, standing beside Dr. Mendes, seemed like a new woman. Tears still streamed down her wrinkled face, but the sparkle in her eyes was of a long-lost peace. She extended her hand to Sophia, a simple gesture, yet laden with a gratitude that words could not express. Sophia descended from the bench, feeling an irresistible urge to approach the woman who had almost been a victim of such cruel injustice. As she touched Donna Ilara's cold, trembling hand, she felt an unexpected warmth, a deep connection, a sharing of humanity that transcended the roles of judge and defendant. "Donna Ilara, I am so sorry for everything you've been through," Sophia said, her voice soft and sincere. The elderly woman simply squeezed her hand, a fragile, genuine smile blossoming on her lips. "Truth always finds its way, my dear, and today it found a beacon in you." Donna Ilara's words touched Sophia deeply, dispelling the shame she felt. As the bailiff led Osvaldo out of the room, handcuffed and his face disfigured by despair, the audience's murmuring intensified. Justice that day had been served in a way no one expected. Reporters crowded around, eager for statements, but Sophia knew her role there was over. She needed time to process everything. "Doctor." Ricardo, the prosecutor, approached Sophia, his face still shocked. "Your Honor, I don't know what to say. We were so certain. I appreciate your openness to the unexpected. You averted a disaster." Sophia merely nodded, her thoughts in a whirlwind. Ricardo's humility was a rare comfort, but the lesson was hers. Donna Ilara, supported by Dr. Mendes, began to make her way to the exit, the crowd parting for her with respect and admiration. Each step was a victory, each glance a recognition. She turned one last time, seeking Sophia with her eyes, and waved slightly, a gesture of farewell and gratitude. Sophia returned the wave, feeling a warmth in her chest. Seeing Donna Ilara walk free was the true reward. The room gradually emptied, leaving Sophia alone with her thoughts. She returned to her chair, the seat cold beneath her body. The gavel, once a symbol of power, now seemed a reminder of the fragility of her own conviction. The raven was gone, but its message remained. That day shattered her certainties, but also opened her eyes to a dimension of justice that books could never teach. Life, she reflected, was full of mysteries, and truth at times needed the inexplicable to manifest itself. She thought of Donna Ilara's family, of the pain of the unjust accusation, and the relief that would now envelop them. Human connection, the altruism of seeking truth, Donna Ilara's resilience, all these values, which she held so dear, had been tested and reaffirmed. That trial was not just about laws, but about the human soul and the search for balance. Sophia felt a new purpose, a flame ignited in her heart. From then on, her approach to justice would be different, more attentive to the whispers of intuition and the signs that life, at times, sent. The courtroom for her would never be the same. The courtroom for Sophia would never be the same. The echo of hurried footsteps and press murmurs had dissipated, leaving her alone with the heavy silence and vivid memories of that extraordinary day. She felt the weight of the gavel in her hand, not as an instrument of power, but as a constant reminder of the fragility of human justice and her own vulnerability in the face of the unexpected. The image of Donna Ilara, free and with eyes full of gratitude, was a balm to her soul. But the shadow of what almost happened haunted her. How close had she been to condemning an innocent person? Sophia stood up, her movements slow, as if the air in the room was still dense with the recently released emotions. She needed fresh air, a moment to organize the storm of thoughts swirling in her mind. As she left the room, the corridor was strangely deserted. The late afternoon light streamed through the tall windows, painting the marble floor with golden and orange hues. She walked, each step echoing in her solitude, to the large oak door that led to the street. Outside, the city buzzed, oblivious to the revolution that had just occurred within those walls. Sophia inhaled deeply the fresh air, feeling it clear some of the fog from her mind. As she descended the courthouse steps, her eyes fixed on the sky, searching for the raven. It wasn't there, only white clouds and the deep blue. "Your Honor," a soft voice called her. Sophia turned, surprised. It was Mrs. Lucia, the court janitor, a woman with grey hair and kind eyes, who always greeted her with a discreet smile. She held a broom and a bucket, her cleaning shift beginning. "Mrs. Lucia," Sophia replied, a little dazed. The janitor approached, a peculiar glint in her eye. "I saw the raven, Your Honor. It was here, on the ledge, even before the trial began, for days. It always comes." Sophia frowned. "Always? What do you mean?" Lucia smiled, an enigmatic smile. "Ah, yes, for years, whenever there's a very difficult case. One that seems like it will end badly for someone who doesn't deserve it, it appears. It stays watching, quiet, and in some of those cases, something unexpected happens, like today." She looked at the sky. "My grandfather used to say they are messengers. That truth sometimes needs wings to reach where human justice cannot." The janitor's words struck Sophia like lightning. It wasn't a coincidence then. It wasn't just an isolated event. That raven, that intervention had a pattern, a history. Sophia's rational mind struggled to accept the idea, but her heart, now more open to life's mysteries, felt a shiver of recognition. Truth indeed needed wings. And perhaps, just perhaps, she had been chosen to witness and understand this ancestral secret. A turning point that promised to redefine not only her career, but her very understanding of the world. Truth, indeed, needed wings, and perhaps, just perhaps, she had been chosen to witness and understand this ancestral secret, a turning point that promised to redefine not only her career, but her very understanding of the world. Sophia remained there, standing on the courthouse steps, the evening air beginning to cool on her face. Mrs. Lucia's words echoed in her mind, mingling with the images of Osvaldo's video and the raven's core. Her logical mind, trained by years of study and jurisprudence, struggled to find a fit for that narrative. Winged messengers, ancestral secrets, they seemed like something from ancient tales, not a modern, impersonal courtroom. But how could she ignore what her own eyes had witnessed? She pressed her lips together, feeling her fingertips tingle. Mrs. Lucia, with her simplicity and serene gaze, had planted a seed of doubt and at the same time of a new faith. Sophia had always believed that justice was a human system, fallible but built on reason and evidence. Now, she found herself facing a dimension that transcended the tangible, a force that seemed to intervene when humanity failed. With a deep sigh, Sophia descended the last steps and began to walk along the sidewalk. The city lights flickered on one by one, and the hum of traffic seemed a distant echo of a world that, for her, had irrevocably changed. She thought of Donna Ilara, of the peace she finally found, of the dignity that was restored to her. The image of the elderly woman, with her hands clasped in silent prayer, was a powerful reminder that truth, however long it took, would always find a voice. The judge felt a warmth in her chest, a sensation that was not of fear or confusion, but of an awakening. It was as if a blindfold had been removed from her eyes, allowing her to see beyond the obvious, beyond what books taught. Justice was not just about punishing the guilty and protecting the innocent. It was about restoring balance, about the belief that, deep down, goodness and truth would always prevail. Upon arriving home, her apartment seemed different. The silence, once a refuge, now seemed filled with the echoes of that day. She sat in the living room armchair, looking out the window where the full moon was beginning to rise in the night sky. Her thoughts wandered to the raven, to its mysterious appearance, to the medallion that carried the truth. It was an enigma, yes, but an enigma that brought with it a profound lesson in humility. Sophia realized that her ambition, once focused on professional advancement and recognition, now turned to something greater, the pursuit of a more complete, more human justice, more attentive to the signs that life offered. She would no longer be the same judge. Her rational mind would still be there, but now it would be tempered by keen intuition, by an openness to the inexplicable. That day was not just a trial, it was a metamorphosis, and she was ready to embrace this new way of seeing the world, this new way of serving justice with a lighter heart and a wiser soul. Sophia realized that her ambition, once focused on professional advancement and recognition, now turned to something greater, the pursuit of a more complete, more human justice, more attentive to the signs that life offered. She would no longer be the same judge. Her rational mind would still be there, but now it would be tempered by keen intuition, by an openness to the inexplicable. That day was not just a trial, it was a metamorphosis. And she was ready to embrace this new way of seeing the world, this new way of serving justice with a lighter heart and a wiser soul. That night, Sophia's sleep was restless, punctuated by flashes of the day: Donna Ilara's face, Osvaldo's video, the raven's caw, Mrs. Lucia's enigmatic smile. At dawn, the soft light entering her bedroom window seemed to bring with it a renewed clarity. She got up, feeling physically tired, but with a mental energy she hadn't experienced in a long time. Breakfast was in silence, her thoughts still entangled in the webs of that mystery. Upon arriving at the courthouse the next morning, Sophia felt a palpable difference in the air. The corridors, once cold and impersonal, now seemed laden with a story she finally understood. The gazes of colleagues and staff were different. There was a respect mixed with curiosity, a silent admiration for what had happened. She noticed that the buzz about the Raven of Justice was already spreading, transforming the event into an urban legend that would surely be told for years. In her office, the pile of cases on her desk seemed heavier, but also more significant. Each document, each testimony now carried a new layer of responsibility. She knew that, from then on, she could no longer rely solely on the coldness of the law and the logic of evidence. There was a human element, a breath of life that needed to be considered, a space for the intuition she had previously suppressed. Sophia picked up her robe, the dark, heavy fabric in her hands. Before, it was a symbol of unquestionable authority. Now it seemed a cloak of humility, a constant reminder that justice, in its deepest essence, was a service to truth, not merely an exercise of power. She thought of the values that guided her: family, altruism, justice, resilience, and human connection. All of them had been tested and, in some unexpected way, reaffirmed that day. The image of Donna Ilara, with her dignity restored, was a beacon. The elderly woman's resilience, who endured the unjust accusation with unwavering faith, inspired Sophia to look at each case with a more compassionate, more human gaze. She found herself reflecting on the importance of listening not only to what was said, but also to what was felt, what lay between the lines of pain and hope. That day in court was not the end of a case, but the beginning of a new journey for Sophia. She felt that life had granted her a rare gift, the opportunity to see beyond the veil, to understand that justice, at times, needed a touch of the inexplicable to manifest in its fullness. And she, Dr. Sophia Almeida, was ready to be that bridge between the visible and the invisible, between the law and the human soul, guided by a wisdom not learned from books, but revealed in the most extraordinary moments. Sophia, with a lighter heart and a wiser soul, felt that life had prepared her for a new chapter. The morning after Donna Ilara's trial, the courthouse seemed a different place. It wasn't just the buzz about the Raven of Justice spreading through the corridors, but a subtle, almost palpable energy that permeated the air. The gazes of colleagues and staff towards Sophia were of respect mixed with curiosity, a silent admiration for what had happened. She, in turn, felt more connected to them, less isolated in her tower of reason. In her office, the pile of cases on her desk seemed the same, but the way Sophia looked at them had changed. Each document, each testimony, now carried a new layer of responsibility, a reminder that behind the cold words of the law, there were complex lives and deep emotions. She knew that from then on, she could no longer rely solely on the coldness of facts and the logic of evidence. There was a human element, a breath of life, that needed to be considered, a space for the intuition she had previously rigorously suppressed. That day, the first case on her docket was a contentious divorce, seemingly routine but laden with old grievances. A couple, Mr. and Mrs. Fernandez, were disputing custody of their granddaughter, a 7-year-old girl. The documentary evidence favored Mrs. Fernandez, who had a more stable financial situation. The law, in its coldness, would point to her. But observing the two grandparents, Sophia noticed something. Mr. Fernandez, though more humble, had a sparkle in his eyes when speaking of his granddaughter, a tenderness that Mrs. Fernandez, with her rigid and calculating demeanor, did not show. Sophia leaned forward, her voice softer than usual. "Mr. and Mrs. Fernandez, I understand your pain. The law seeks the child's well-being, but the law also knows that love is not measured in material possessions." She paused, looking at each of them. "I perceive that both of you love your granddaughter, but there is a love expressed in gestures, in presence, in a look, and there is a love expressed in provisions." Dr. Ricardo, who was present as a prosecutor in another case, observed Sophia with an expression of surprise. She was going off script, speaking of emotions in a courtroom. Sophia continued, her eyes fixed on Mr. Fernandez. "Mr. Fernandez, what does your granddaughter most enjoy doing with you?" The man, caught by surprise, hesitated, and then a genuine smile lit up his wrinkled face. "Ah, Your Honor, she loves it when I take her to feed the ducks in the park, and when we read stories before bed, with the voices I make for each character." Mrs. Fernandez rolled her eyes, but Sophia noticed a slight tremor in her lips. "And you, Mrs. Fernandez?" Sophia asked, turning to the grandmother. "What is the most special moment you share with your granddaughter?" The woman hesitated, her face hardened. "Well, I take her to buy new clothes and toys, and I help her with her homework." The words were correct, but devoid of warmth. Sophia felt a lump in her throat. The law, by itself, would not capture the essence of that love. She remembered Mrs. Lucia's words about truth needing wings. There, the truth was not in a video, but in the hearts of those people. "I will request a more in-depth psychosocial report, focusing on the child's emotional connection with each of you," Sophia declared, her voice firm but laden with a new conviction. Justice, at times, needs to look beyond the obvious, to the small details that reveal the true essence of human relationships. Dr. Ricardo nodded slowly, a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. Sophia knew she was breaking paradigms, breaking the rigidity that defined her. But she didn't care. That day was not just about a divorce. It was about the beginning of a new era in her career. an era where the law would be guided not only by reason, but by compassion and the relentless pursuit of truth in all its forms, visible and invisible. She was ready to be that bridge, to listen to the whispers of the human soul and to allow intuition to guide her gavel. The raven might have left, but its lesson remained, etched into every fiber of Sophia's being. The raven might have left, but its lesson remained, etched into every fiber of Sophia's being. The days that followed Donna Ilara's trial were a whirlwind of emotions and reflections for the judge. The Fernandez case, which seemed like a common divorce, transformed into a laboratory for her new philosophy of justice. She awaited the psychosocial report with a different anxiety, not just for the precision of facts, but for the depth of emotions it would reveal. When the report finally arrived, Sophia read it with meticulous attention, each word weighing on her soul. The document detailed the routine of little Sophia, the granddaughter in question, and how she interacted with each grandparent. The pages described the girl's genuine joy in feeding the ducks with Mr. Fernandez, the way she snuggled into his lap to listen to stories with funny voices. In contrast, Mrs. Fernandez, though providing material comfort, was portrayed as emotionally distant, focused more on tasks and obligations than on affectionate bonds. The psychologist responsible for the report highlighted the vital importance of emotional connection for the child's healthy development, emphasizing that financial stability alone did not fill the void of a hug or a shared laugh. Sophia felt a lump in her throat. The law, in its rawest form, would have favored Mrs. Fernandez, but the truth, the one that needed wings to be seen, was there. Between the lines of that report, in the heart of that child, she called a new hearing, this time with a more intimate, less formal tone. Seeing Mr. and Mrs. Fernandez seated before her again, Sophia observed their faces. Mr. Fernandez, with his hands clasped, seemed hopeful but tired. Mrs. Fernandez maintained her rigid posture, a silent challenge in her eyes. Sophia took a deep breath. "Mr. and Mrs. Fernandez," she began, her voice soft but laden with authority, "the psychosocial report was conclusive. It showed us that little Sophia needs more than material possessions. She needs affection, presence, and an environment where her joy and imagination can flourish freely." She paused, looking at Mrs. Fernandez. "The law seeks the protection of the child, and that protection extends to their emotional and psychological well-being." Mrs. Fernandez opened her mouth to protest, but Sophia interrupted her with a gesture. "It's not about blame, Mrs. Fernandez, but about understanding. Love takes many forms, but the love that little Sophia most needs right now is the one that Mr. Fernandez, with his simplicity and tenderness, has demonstrated." Sophia then delivered her decision, granting primary custody to Mr. Fernandez, establishing a broad and flexible visitation schedule for Mrs. Fernandez, encouraging her to seek a deeper connection with her granddaughter. Upon hearing the sentence, Mr. Fernandez let out a sigh of relief, and his eyes filled with tears of gratitude. Mrs. Fernandez, in turn, lowered her head, and Sophia noticed an almost imperceptible tremor in her shoulders, a sign that the truth, however painful, had touched something within her. Dr. Ricardo, present again, nodded with a discreet smile. He understood. Sophia felt a warmth in her chest. It was not a personal victory, but a victory for justice in its most human form. That day reaffirmed her new journey, the certainty that the law, when tempered by compassion and intuition, could truly heal and restore. She was ready for the next challenges, knowing that truth, at times, revealed itself in the simplest hearts, and that her mission was to be the voice for that truth. The decision in the Fernandez case reverberated through the courthouse corridors, not with the bang of a gavel, but with the whisper of a new approach. Sophia felt eyes on her, curious or skeptical, but her conviction was unshakable. The following days were filled with routine, but for Sophia, each case was a universe of lives and emotions to be unraveled, not just articles and paragraphs. Her mind, once logical, was now a garden where intuition blossomed alongside reason. Then, Pedro's case emerged. A young man in his early 20s, with eyes clouded with sadness, accused of $1 million embezzlement at the company. The circumstantial evidence was overwhelming: bank transfers to offshore accounts, colleagues' testimonies, and the absence of an alibi. Public opinion had already condemned him, and the press painted a grim picture of betrayal and greed. Sophia felt the weight of that case differently. Something in Pedro's demeanor, in his choked voice, denying guilt, reminded her of Donna Elara. A fragility, a veiled innocence that the evidence didn't capture. She observed his gestures, his clasped hands, his lost gaze. He didn't seem like a calculating criminal. He seemed like a lamb led to slaughter. The trial progressed day after day. With each new piece of evidence from the prosecution, the lump in Sophia's throat tightened. Dr. Ricardo, the prosecutor, was relentless, building a wall of facts impossible to breach. Sophia tried to find a loophole, a loose thread, but the web was perfect. She requested additional reports, deeper investigations, but everything converged to the same conclusion: Pedro was guilty. The pressure on Sophia was immense. Colleagues questioned her new sensitivity, suggesting that emotions clouded her judgment, but she couldn't ignore what she felt. Every night at home, she reviewed the case files, searching for something to justify her intuition. And every night, the image of the raven hovering over the courthouse came to her mind. Would it appear again? Would Pedro be another case where human justice would fail without an intervention from the inexplicable? On the morning of the last day of testimonies, before closing arguments, Sophia arrived at the courthouse with a heavy heart. As she parked, her eyes were drawn to the ledge. There it was, the raven, quiet, majestic, observing. A shiver ran down Sophia's spine. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a sign. During the hearing, as the prosecution presented its final evidence, Sophia felt the tension growing in the room. Pedro was pale, his eyes fixed on the floor, hope almost extinguished. The audience, filled with journalists and curious onlookers, anticipated the verdict with a voracity that bothered her. Sophia looked at the raven, which was now perched on the window, observing the scene with an ancestral wisdom. Almost like a silent guardian, she knew she was on the threshold of a decisive moment, a point of no return. Truth, once again, needed wings to reveal itself. Time was running out quickly, and she needed something, anything, to prevent an irreparable error that would haunt her conscience forever. Pedro's fate, and perhaps her own renewed faith in justice, hung by a thread. The silence in the room was almost unbearable, laden with suffocating expectation. The silence in the room was almost unbearable, laden with suffocating expectation. Sophia felt the weight of the gazes, the pressure to deliver a sentence that logic and evidence seemed to demand. Pedro, before her, seemed like a spectre, life draining from his eyes. She looked at the raven in the window, and the bird, as if understanding her despair, tilted its head, its black eyes fixed on her. Suddenly, with a caw that cut through the air, the raven took flight. Not far away, but to the center of the room, flying in circles over the astonished heads. A murmur began, but was soon silenced by astonishment. The raven descended gently, landing not at Sophia's feet, but on the prosecution's table, right next to Dr. Ricardo. In its beak, it carried a small object. It was a miniature raven carved from dark wood, with details so fine it seemed alive. The real bird released the miniature and with a final caw flew out the window, disappearing into the sky. Dr. Ricardo, visibly shocked, extended a trembling hand and picked up the object. It was light but solid. Examining it, he noticed a small slit at the base. With a soft click, the miniature opened, revealing a tiny, rolled-up paper inside. The prosecutor carefully unrolled it, and his eyes widened as he read the content. Sophia, her heart pounding erratically, felt that truth, once again, had found its way. Dr. Ricardo, pale, coughed and his voice came out hoarse. "Your Honor, this document is a confession." He held up the paper, which looked old and yellowed. "It's a letter signed by Mr. Valerio, the company's chief accountant, confessing to the embezzlement and detailing how he framed Pedro. He mentions that he hid this confession inside a raven sculpture, a gift he received from an artisan, so that the truth would come to light if anything happened to him." A murmur of shock swept through the room. Pedro raised his head, his eyes wide with disbelief, and slowly, with rekindled hope. Mrs. Lucia, present in the audience, smiled with tear-filled eyes, a smile of one who already knew. Sophia felt immense relief, a weight dissipating from her shoulders. Her intuition had not deceived her. That small piece of paper, brought by a winged messenger, unraveled a web of lies and saved an innocent person. "Dr. Ricardo, please verify the authenticity of this document immediately, and let Mr. Valerio be located to provide clarification." The room erupted in a buzz of voices. Journalists rushed to their phones. The audience commented in shock. Pedro, now standing, looked at Sophia with unspeakable gratitude. His eyes, once lifeless, shone with tears of liberation. Sophia struck the gavel, restoring order. "The hearing will be suspended while the new evidence is verified. Pedro, you are released until further notice." Her voice was firm, but her heart sang. As she left the courthouse, Sophia felt the fresh afternoon air on her face. There was no raven in sight, but its presence was felt in every fiber of her being. That day was not just the resolution of a case, it was the reaffirmation of a new faith. Justice, she understood, was not just a set of laws and procedures. It was a living force which at times manifested in mysterious ways, through signs and messengers that reason could not explain. She thought of Donna Ilara, of Pedro, of all who might one day find themselves entangled in the webs of injustice. Her mission now was to be the bridge, the voice that listened not only to the evidence, but to the whispers of truth that came from unexpected places. Justice was a complex garden, and she was learning to care for each flower, to recognize each seed of hope. With a serene smile, Sophia Almeida walked, ready to embrace the next chapter of her journey, certain that goodness and truth would always find a way to prevail, even if they needed wings to do so. The news of Pedro's innocence and Valerio's confession spread like a rushing river, flooding the city and the country. The Raven of Justice was now more than a legend. It was a symbol of hope, a reminder that truth, however hidden, would always find a way. For Sophia, the following days were filled with profound serenity, but also a silent effervescence. She felt the lightness of a burden she didn't know she carried, the freedom of being who she truly was, a judge who dared to look beyond the veil of the law. In the courthouse, the gazes towards her had changed again. It was no longer curiosity or skepticism, but a reverent respect, almost admiration. Colleagues who once criticized her for her sensitivity now sought her guidance, wanting to understand how she managed to see what others did not. Dr. Ricardo, in particular, became a loyal ally, a prosecutor who, alongside Sophia, began to redefine what it meant to seek justice, not just conviction. Sophia spent more time with her family. Meals with her mother, once punctuated by her distant mind, were now moments of genuine sharing, laughter, and tight hugs. She told stories, not legal details, but life lessons, the transformations she witnessed. Her mother, with her quiet wisdom, simply smiled, her eyes full of pride. "I always knew you had a big heart, my daughter. Sometimes we just need a little push to let it guide the way." Her relationship with Mrs. Lucia also deepened. The old woman, with her unwavering faith, became a friend and confidant, a beacon of intuition and hope. They met for tea, and Sophia listened to Lucia's stories about life, about nature, about the interconnectedness of all things. Lucia never boasted about the raven, only said, with a twinkle in her eye, that the universe has its own messengers, and it's up to us to be open to hearing them. Sophia applied this new perspective to each new case. She did not abandon logic and evidence. On the contrary, she used them as a foundation, but allowed intuition and compassion to be the roof, the protection that sheltered the truth. In a land dispute case between neighbors, where the law seemed to favor the wealthier party, Sophia insisted on visiting the properties, talking to the residents, feeling the land, and it was there, listening to the family's stories, seeing the marks of generations on the soil, that she found a just solution, one that honored not only the documents, but the history and sweat of each individual. Her courtroom, once a stage for cold decisions, transformed into a space for dialogue, for the pursuit of conciliation and human understanding. Sophia's gavel was no longer an instrument of imposition, but of balance, of restoration. She understood that true justice was not about punishing, but about healing, about restoring harmony, about giving a voice to those who had none. The raven never appeared in her courtroom again, but its lesson remained. Sophia knew that life was a complex tapestry, where the visible and the invisible intertwined, and she, Dr. Sophia Almeida, was ready to be that weaver, to honor the law with her heart, to seek truth with her soul, and to build a legacy of justice that would echo for many generations, a legacy where compassion and intuition were as valuable as any article of law. She had found her purpose, her place in the world, and walked with the lightness of one who knows that the greatest wisdom lies in listening to the whispers of the universe and trusting in the innate goodness of the human heart. The lightness Sophia felt was not the absence of challenges, but the certainty of possessing the tools to face them. Her days in court continued to be filled with the complexity of human life, but now each case was approached with a depth that went beyond legal codes. She saw people, not just defendants or parties, and sought the truth that resided in their hearts, in their untold stories. The courtroom, once a stage of rigid formalities, had transformed into a sanctuary where active listening and empathy were as vital as legal argumentation. A new challenge arose, not in a formal lawsuit, but as a mediation request from the City Hall. It concerned an old square in the heart of the city's oldest neighborhood, a place beloved by residents. The City Hall planned to revitalize it, but the project, modern and bold, disregarded the wishes of the elderly who spent their afternoons there, the children who played under the centuries-old trees, and the small merchants who depended on the flow of people. There was a deep division in the community. On one side, those who saw modernization as progress. On the other, those who feared the loss of identity and memories. Sophia accepted the invitation, seeing an opportunity to apply her philosophy. Instead of convening a formal hearing, she organized open meetings in the square itself, sitting on a garden bench, without her robe, without her gavel. She listened. She listened to Donna Clara, 80 years old, who recounted how her late husband proposed to her under the central almond tree. She listened to Mr. Miguel, the newspaper stand owner, who feared losing his livelihood if pedestrian traffic changed. She listened to young teacher Anna, who advocated for the need for a safer and more accessible space for children. Her eyes scanned the faces, capturing the emotions, fears, and hopes. Dr. Ricardo, who accompanied her as an observer, noticed the transformation. Sophia was not imposing, but building. She proposed that the revitalization project be redesigned, incorporating modern elements, but preserving the essence of the square. She suggested that the almond tree be the central point of the new design, that the benches be kept in their original style, and that a space for small merchants be guaranteed. More importantly, she encouraged the creation of a community council to oversee the execution, ensuring that everyone's voice was heard. At first, there was resistance. The architects of the original project felt undervalued, and some more radical residents still doubted the conciliation. But Sophia, with her patience and gentle firmness, continued to dialogue, to show that justice was not a victory of one side over the other, but the construction of a shared future. She emphasized the value of human connection, collective memory, and altruism in yielding a little so that everyone could gain. Slowly, hearts began to open. Donna Clara smiled upon seeing the almond tree highlighted in the new sketches. Mr. Miguel saw his sales point guaranteed. Teacher Anna was satisfied with the inclusion of a safe play area. The square would be revitalized, yes, but with its soul preserved. At the end of the last meeting, with the agreement sealed by handshakes and sincere smiles, Sophia felt profound gratitude. There was no visible raven, but the lesson it brought was alive in every gesture, in every word of conciliation. Justice, she knew, was a continuous act of love and understanding. A garden that flourished with the dedication of those who believe in the innate goodness of the human being. And she, Dr. Sophia Almeida, was there to cultivate this garden, one step at a time, with the certainty that truth and harmony would always find a way, guided by an open heart and a wise mind. Her journey, far from ending, only deepened, inspiring everyone who crossed her path to look beyond the obvious, to listen to the whispers of the soul, and to build a more just and human world.